Good morning, everybody. Got your coffee? I got mine. You know what I was thinking about earlier today, when I was piddling around the house? I was thinking to myself, the type of personality, because I'm fascinated by human nature and I'm always so curious about why it is people do the things that they do. And it's fascinating for me. And the kind of personality that I find like really fascinating is the person who doesn't care about anybody but themselves. That's always so, I'm always like, how do you get there? And mind you, I do understand that some people get there because of trauma. I do. When you have had so much happen to you in your life where you have to hyper focus on yourself and you can't care about or be worried about anybody else because you are the only person out there saving you and everything is against you in the moment. I get that. I do understand that. But those aren't the people I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that just don't give a fuck about nobody but themselves. Like, how do you get there? That's actually one of the biggest issues about American Americans because we are also individualistic and to the point where we don't care about each other so much anymore. We only care about ourselves. And then when some shit starts happening to us, we want other people to care. It's like, I'll take like my community, for instance. Like I don't shop in, like the Asian stores. I don't go to like Denny's or Waffle House or, a lot of the I don't patronize the Palestinian stores. When I lived in Detroit, I stopped doing all of that, as my eyes began to open. And the reason why I did that is because those people have been known to have a really big issue with how they handle my people. And so one of the ways that I can protest that is by not giving them my money and keeping as many black dollars in my community as possible for as long as possible. And I'm not 100% in that, but then how can you be in a nation where you are not the favored community? It's very hard when you have the least amount of resources. You're going to have to spend outside of the community. But I do try to be very deliberate in keeping as much of my money in the community as possible. So when I see videos of black people being treated badly in an Asian store or in a beauty supply store or someplace where a Denny's, someplace, it's racism at Denny's. We've been on that. We've been knew that. Oh, look at how they treated me at this beauty supply. We keep trying to tell y'all to find a different way. And yet I went to the nail tech and look at how they treated me. And it's like, okay, but what did you do when the last sister complained? What did you do when the last brother complained? Did you just ignore their cry? And now you want your cries heard? Because now the injustice is pointed at you. It's directed at you. So much is going on in the country, and life here in America is becoming increasingly unaffordable. And I remember when people were starting, were having these conversations like, hey, we can't afford medications. So many of our elderly couldn't afford medications. And so many people couldn't afford good daycare for their kids. And so many people just couldn't afford to go to college. And people couldn't afford gas, and they couldn't afford food, and they couldn't afford just life. And so many of us turned the other cheek. And then while we were turning the other cheek, these corporations were amping up. And they were coming up with more ways to rob us of our money. It's like when you go to, I'll use this for an example. Like when you go and you get a bottle of seasonings from like the Kroger, and the bottle is this big, but the seasonings, you only got this much seasoning in it. It's just more and more ways. Or when you go to scan an item and it's not the same price as it was on the shelf, that's theft. Or when you buy a package of poultry or meat or something like that, and it says, it's got the price per pound, and it says that it's 2 pounds, but you take it home and you realize it's just 1.5 pounds. It's just more and more and more ways. And that things are being taken from us. And some of us who are members of marginalized communities, we're used to that. We've been crying out that, but now you have the community formerly known as the middle class. And I say formerly known because they are now struggling. And these are people that, you saw going and enjoying life and just not caring about anybody other than themselves. And remember, and for the last 2 years now, they've been on TikTok or social media, some other social media platform, crying and screaming about how they can't afford their rent. They can't afford their groceries. Some of them are having to use pantries, and they never had to use food pantries before. Do you remember that viral video where that one lady, and you could tell she at one point was middle class, and she went to the pantry and everything that came out of the bag, she had a complaint about. What can I do with this? What can I do with that? And and these are what you call the new poors. That's what I like to call them. The new poor people. And they're not used to struggling. And so when they get on social media and they start complaining, the complaints are so ridiculous because those of us who have always been in the struggle, we know what it is. We know what it feels like. We know what it is to have to go on a pot of beans, baby, and make it last 2-3 days. We know, we've been there. We know what peanut butter jelly, ramen noodles. We know that. We know what that feels like, but they don't know what it feels like. And they're screaming out for somebody to care. But if we had all cared about each other in the first place, we might not be here. In fact, we probably wouldn't. The trick, and we're in reverse. People only care in America. The only people who are cared for or are heard or seen are people with the haves. The people with all the resources, the people that have everything, they are the only people that get heard in America. And the people that don't get heard are the people that don't have anything. But if we stop focusing on the haves and we start focusing on the have-nots, the people who are way down at the bottom, and we make sure that the resources are there for them, when times get tough, when times get hard, the resources will be there for us too. Because you never know what's going to happen. And honey, these new poors, they never thought that they would be here. They never thought that they would see an America where they couldn't afford their property taxes or their mortgages or their car insurance or their car note or their medication, or they wouldn't be able to put their kids through school. They never thought that they would be there. They never thought it would be them. Excuse me. And so they were very, 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 very comfortable with allowing it to happen to others and not caring when it was happening to others. That's how we got here. Not caring that the collective was cared for. That is how we got here. We let these politicians and the powers that be and the 1%ers and the corporations divide us and separate us so far from each other to where we don't give a shit whether our neighbor eat that night or not. Woo. I got coffee everywhere. Anyway, let's keep going. We don't care whether our neighbors eat or not. We don't care whether the kids are safe or not. How is it that we are not doing anything about kids being safe in schools? How do we not care enough to do anything about that? What was it over in New Zealand? They had one person who committed an act with, I think it was an AR-15 with an assault rifle. Let's just say that to keep it safe. That's all it took for them to ban those weapons. I don't understand how we get to a point where we don't care about anybody. We don't care if kids are safe. We don't care if people eat. We don't care if people got their cancer medications. We don't care if people got a home. We don't care. We see something and we just turn our heads the other way. How do you get to that? There are people that don't care nothing about this election. They don't care nothing about, excuse me, the increase in hate crimes. They don't care that people are still being lynched in this nation. Not just with bullets, but with rope too. But when it's you want the care and concern. Whatever happened to treat people the way you want to be treated? If we stayed on that path and we stuck with that philosophy, treat people the way we want to be treated. And it's not that hard. It really isn't. All you have to do is think about, put yourself in those shoes, and then do by that person what you would want that person to do by you. It's not that hard. And then when it's us that need to be thrown a lifeline, we want everybody to stop dead in their tracks and care about what it is we're going through. And we don't have the right to do that. We don't have the right to do that if we are not doing our part. I say this to say that I hope that what I have said inspires you to just care just a little bit. Donate to a food pantry. Drive to the nearest school and put some money on the books for school lunches, which these kids shouldn't have to pay for. Donate all that stuff that you know you don't need to a thrift store that doesn't have a big greedy CEO sitting at the top of it. You cutting your grass today, go cut that old person's grass that you know is struggling a little bit. You see elderly or poor people in your neighborhood, send them a $20 grocery card in the mail anonymously. Since y'all love being anonymous. But do something. Do something. That's all I gotta say. Thank you again, Sheila and Tanya. I appreciate y'all. If you would like to help out the Curbside Library, I will leave the link in the comments below. If you would like to buy me another cup of coffee, it's coffee everywhere, y'all. I'll leave my Cash App and my Venmo down in the comments. If you want change, you got to be change. If you want change, you got to be change. If you want it to change, you got to change it. If you want help, you got to be helped. If you want to be thought of, you got to think of others. If you want respect, you got to respect others. You can't ask for what you don't give.